Okay, welcome to this pre-recorded lesson. So I'm Mrs. Miles and I'll be delivering your non-examined assessment for A-Level PE. This is called your EAPI, which also includes your practical performance. So over the course of this presentation, I'm going to go through exactly what it is that your NEA includes. Your NEA is worth 30% of your grade, so it's really important that you put as much effort into this as you would do all the other aspects of the course. Okay, so the practical element of your NEA is you performing or coaching in one sport. This sport needs to be something that you know you can get a decent marking, and it's something that you need to be performing in on regular occasions. So therefore, you need to be training regularly. So if you're not part of a team or train with a club, you need to start doing so, making that a priority as soon as possible. School teams is the minimum level that you should be thinking about performing at. So what you need to do is complete a log of every time you perform so we can see the standard that you're actually competing at. And that's a bit of an indicator. You need to make sure your fitness is at a good level because you're assessed on how fit you are in relation to performing in that activity, as well as looking at your skill level and your ability to apply tactics. Obviously, if you are coaching, this has a slightly different setup. So if anybody does want to coach, then if you drop me an email, I can go through that with you. The practical element is worth 15% of your overall grade, and you need to make sure it is your responsibility to be keeping your standard high enough and getting your evidence for this. So that would include 2 points for video assessment when you submit, so I can check where you are at, and then a final submission of your videos of the best work. These videos need to be easily recognisable, so in a bib, a coloured bib or a numbered bib, so we can see. Obviously, if it's a game, for example, you're in a team, then you'd identify that you are red number 6, for example, so we knew which position you were playing in and knew where to observe. Obviously, I'll go through all the information in terms of how you do your footage nearer the time, but just get your head around the actual impact that this practical performance needs to have. Okay, so the verbal examination, or your EAPI, is the other part of your NEA, it's the coursework aspect. So we will work and build upon this over the next 2 years, and then in around February, March time of year 13, you will do your formal examination. It will be recorded, oral exam delivered to me and recorded on the iPad, so that's what we submit to the exam board. You analyse your chosen activity, and that doesn't have to be the one that you perform in, but it's usually the best one because it's the one you know the most about. And you analyse the performance that we show you, and then you pick a weakness to improve, and you create an action plan around that. On the next few slides, I'm going to go through exactly what you do in each element, so a bit of a structure overview. But that is the exam. Okay, so when you are observing the performance, you make notes. So it's not a thing where you have to do the assessment live. You watch it, make notes, and then you deliver your response. So you need to identify the strengths of the performer. So as many of them as you see. You can't make these up. If you miss vital strengths or weaknesses when you're observing, then that's obviously going to have an impact on your marks. So you need to make sure you watch it thoroughly and write down every strength that you see. Now, this needs to be in relation to the skills, so what they're physically doing. So football, instep pass, long pass, lofted pass, attacking header, defensive header, etc. You also need to look at the fitness, which would be stuff like strength, stamina, speed, suppleness, muscular endurance, etc. And comment on the strengths and weaknesses for those, and also their tactical awareness. So obviously, again, if we're relating to football, but again, it could be anything, we'd be looking at set plays, corners, formations, etc. Obviously, if something more creative like dance, you think about the composition, the application of rads, etc., etc. So once you've identified your major strengths and major weaknesses, you then identify the weakness which would have the most impact if you would improve it. You would then justify fully why you've chosen that, create an action plan which would aim to improve that, and you'd include timescale, how you would measure that, and that includes duration of it, so 8 to 12 weeks, how many sessions a week, how long each session is. Then you'd identify the coaching points that you would give to the performer in order to improve, and that would split into preparation, execution and recovery, and then identify around 10 progressive practices, so step by step of what you're actually going to get the performer to do in order to improve. Throughout all of this, you need to apply theory that you've learnt through the 2-year course. So that is why we teach the course over the 2 years, because you are constantly applying these elements. Okay, so a little task for you to do now is to start get a basic understanding of the requirements of NEA. So what we're going to do is produce a mind map identifying all the major skills for badminton. I understand that you're probably not going to do badminton, but this is just to kind of see what your understanding is at this moment in time, so how we move it forward. So as many skills as you can think of, so things like smash, for example. It says discuss ideas as a group, so if there's anyone around you, feel free to ask your parents, siblings, carers, whoever. And what I'd like to do is, if you can add any depth to your answer, so instead of just putting smash, put a little bit of detail in there. Is there a particular type of skill, or can you break that skill into preparation, execution, recovery, example? Can you put a bit of depth in it so I can see what you already know? Okay, second task then. So exactly the same process as the previous one, but this time I want you to mind map the fitness components you need for badminton. So start thinking now about, like I said previously, strength, stamina, suppleness, etc. And again, you can ask for support, people around you, and can you add any depth? Maybe start now thinking, and you can apply this to the previous task as well, about giving some reason, some justification of why these fitness components are needed. So it's not quite so much the same for skills, but definitely for fitness components. Why would power, for example, be needed? So just think about the depth you can add to this task. Don't spend too long on this. I'm expecting probably only 5 or so minutes. Okay, so you've probably noticed a bit of a pattern here. So we're going to just carry on with the same process. So by the end of these 3 tasks, you should have 3 mind maps, and the third one is for tactics. What tactics do you need for badminton? Now, this might be a bit more tricky if you don't know much about it, or if you're not playing competitively. If you feel like you need to do a bit of research for this, that's absolutely fine. Try to have a think though, when you're playing, what do you need to do to your opponent in order to score points? So I'm not going to say much more than that, but think about what you need to do, what you can do to gain an advantage. Think about any depth you can add, why you might do that, and maybe link some of these to some of the skills you've already identified or fitness you've already identified to really show your depth of understanding, which would be great. Okay, so the last couple of things I want you to have a look at are strengths and weaknesses. So what I want you to do here is think about the strengths that you have when you play badminton. So you're going to now do a bit of a self-evaluation. So what strengths do you have for skills? What strengths do you have for tactics? What strengths do you have for fitness? Give some reasons why. If you're thinking about skills, how does it reflect the technical model? Do you do exactly the right thing? So, for example, in an overhead clear, are you extending your arm fully above your head? Are you making contact to the highest point? Are you flexing your wrist in order to create power to send the shuttle to the back of the court? How do these skills make your performance good? What impact does it have on you, on the game, for example? And talk a little bit now about elements of a skillful performance. So does it look good? Do you know what you're doing before you do it? Is it coordinated? Are you controlled? Is it efficient? You're not wasting any energy, etc. So what I'd like you to do is identify your strengths in badminton. Okay, and again now here we need to do exactly the same process of self-evaluation, but this time for weaknesses. So skills, tactics and fitness. What are your weaknesses when you play badminton? Be really critical here, really think about what it is you need to improve and why. How do these weaknesses impact your performance? Is it giving you making sure you're losing the advantage you had? Is it losing you points, etc.? How do you compare to a 10 out of 10 player in relation to the components you've identified? And then what I'd like you to do is from that pick a major weakness. This needs to be a skill. So what is the skill that lets you down when you play badminton the most? Give a really good detailed reason why, lots of justification. Again, always think about relating it to preparation, execution, recovery, the effect of the skill on your performance, on the game, etc., etc. If you do this in a different colour, it'll be really clear to see what you've picked and why. Otherwise, just make sure it's highlighted or underlined. Okay, so that was just a quick whistle-stop tour of our NEA. Obviously, we go into lots of details throughout the 2 years. You'll have one lesson every 2 weeks with me, so you have plenty of time in between lessons to get your head around what we're talking about. And the key point that I want you to take away from this moment in time is get ready for your practical assessment. Make sure you are maintaining your fitness. Make sure you are reading up about your sport. Do you know your knowledge about it? Who is the governing body? What are the rules stating? Like, get really fresh, up-to-date knowledge of issues within your sport, technological advancements, the media portrayal, all these kind of aspects around your sport. Develop your fitness. So if you already know you've got an element of fitness that you need to improve, use this time now to start improving on it. Get in touch with some local clubs if you're not with one and see if you can make an application to join. Obviously, at the moment it might be quite difficult, but still get the feelers out, see when they're starting to take new players on, etc. And really start developing those skills so you can get the most marks, go into your exam with the best, with your best foot forward, because you've already got a really strong practical. See you after the summer.